Hey, how's it going, everyone? Thank you for joining me on a new episode of Best and Worst Track of the Week on the Music Reviewer podcast. My name's Josh, and thanks for stopping by this week. If you follow Best and Worst Track of the Week, sorry for this episode dropping so late. This week has been a little hectic, and I got sick in the middle of it. But nonetheless, it's going up, and super glad I'm covering this week because I kind of was maybe considering doing a more condensed version, but there ended up being some pretty cool stuff on here, some stuff that I didn't necessarily jive with. Just to preview, there's some stuff from Playboi Carti's Whole Lotta Red, Lil Durk, a lot of Lil Durk, some Bryan, Demi Lovato, Blackbear, and All Time Low. So yeah, pretty interesting episode, pretty interesting for Billboard overall, and this is for the week of January 9th. And just before we get started, I want to let everyone know there's a new YouTube-only video titled "What's the Deal with the New Alternative 40 Chart?" It's kind of this new thing I tried where I went over some songs that are on this kind of accumulated chart that's run off of YouTube and Spotify data that brings in Indian alternative rock songs that are doing well right now. If you're interested in what I have to say about that, go ahead and check that video out on the YouTube channel. Just the YouTube channel is titled The Music Reviewer. That's pretty much all I've done since last week's Best and Worst Track of the Week. Album reviews will probably start coming out a little bit more. But anyways, that's pretty much the gist of the last week or so. I'll also link the video to the description of this episode. But also, if you're new to the Music Reviewer podcast or you're joining me on Best and Worst Track of the Week today, and you're not sure what this is, all I do is cover the new entries into the Billboard Hot 100, grade them all with a letter grade, and pick one that's the worst, pick one that's the best. And yeah, like I was saying, it's a pretty interesting week. This is the week after, I guess, the hectic craziness of Christmas on the chart. So, as predicted, most of the Christmas stuff dropped out. And we had the sudden flood of all the stuff that was waiting to come back in, or stuff, just new entries in general that were kind of in a queue waiting for Christmas to die, essentially. And the charts also had some interesting movement. Mood by 24K Golden and Ian Dior is back up to number 1. Taking number 2 is actually Positions by Ariana Grande. So I guess her singles are still doing quite well, for the most part. So I was kind of surprised to see that at number 2. And probably the most surprising thing of this week, Blinding Lights by The Weeknd actually fell off last week, and it re-entered this week at number 3. So I don't really know how that works. If the radio just gave it up for a week and then gave it up and then kind of relapsed and took it in again, I'm not really sure. Probably the most disappointing thing I saw was Holy by Justin Bieber and Chance the Rapper, one of our worst tracks of the week. Probably one of the worst tracks I heard last year, is back up at number 4. I think that's a new peak for it. I really hope that doesn't continue to go up. Probably one of the other cool things, if you've been listening, AJR's Bang is up to number 11. I have ironically been saying I want to see how high this can go, and I think this is gonna get even higher. I don't know. Maybe it'll drop again, but it got up all the way to number 11. I just did not see that happening. So, again, I don't really even like this song, but please entertain my curiosity in there. Also, another cool thing, Therefore I Am by Billie Eilish is up to 18. That one kind of has been dropping for the past couple weeks, probably because of Christmas, but it's nice to see that track still has some traction to it. Maybe it will resurge a little bit in 2021. Disappointed to see Whoop-Dee by CJ up to 27, the mediocre rap track that dropped, I think, sometime around October or November. Don't know what's really so special about it still. I Should Probably Go to Bed by Dan and Shay re-entered at 37. Was kind of bummed to see that as well. That's one of our worst tracks of the week. Really hope that's not going to have a resurgence in 2021. Also, some interesting anomalies. Some tracks like Take You Dancing by Jason Derulo re-entered this week. I kind of thought that track was dead in the water, but I was wrong. So yeah, interesting week coming off of the Christmas high. But anyway, let's get into the tracks this week. This first track is titled The Good Ones by Gabby Barrett, coming in at 100. If you listened last week, I guess Gabby Barrett was a topic of discussion with one of her Christmas tracks. I was not pleasantly surprised to see that she was back with, I guess, a standalone track titled The Good Ones on this week that entered. I can only assume this might grow, but yeah, this track is very okay. I know she's a country artist, but it's really drawing on the line of being whether it's this pop country genre or if it's this sanitary adult alternative that kind of sounds like Christian pop music songwriting wise. The track is completely soaked with the reverb around her vocals. It's a little distracting. There's a supporting dry guitar riff that opens up the track, and there's a rich acoustic guitar thrown in for some flavor, but it's really not enough to keep the song that interesting. She kind of sounds like Miley at some points with some of her vocal inflections and I guess technique on her performance. But the song is pretty stale. It grows even staler as it progresses. It's also really mid-tempo, so it lacks a lot of energy. So I don't really know what to think of it other than I gave it a C. Next track is our first track off of Whole Lotta Red by Playboi Carti featuring Kid Cudi at 99. Metamorphosis. I really don't really have much to say other than Kid Cudi really saved this track. Other than that, the track features a lot of atypical Carti elements, such as typical buzzy synth elements and his high-pitched chipmunk ad-libs. And granted, the track does is kind of introduced by Cudi's typical mooing and moaning, but I do love the sub bass incorporated into the track, and the hook is actually pretty cool. Can't nobody tell you shit, that part, and the ad libs are a little bit too buried on the verses, I'd say, so there are some issues with like the mixing, but yeah, as soon as Cudi comes in, the track gets exponentially better. The track becomes a little bit more vibey, and I give it a B. Next track came in at 93, Death Ain't Easy by Lil Durk. I don't know why so much Lil Durk stuff came in. I didn't even check if he dropped an album or an EP, but this track was decent. Typical Lil Durk qualities, especially with the instrumental being piano-centric. There's some heavy bass hits, like super heavy bass hits. The vocals are pretty good. I like the melodic bass elements that are thrown in at times that kind of show up in a lot of Durk's music. There's also some little sparkly piano melodies thrown in that aren't bad in terms of like embellishing the track. Nice percussive, crisp and sharp drum track here on the percussion side, and it's an interesting track. I gave it a B. Next track was New Neon by Playboi Carti at 92. I thought this was also a pretty interesting track. I like the bouncy synth elements in this beat. There's a nice melodic sub bass as well with those hits on there. The beat just really grooves on here, progresses nicely as well, and it builds on these synth textures throughout the course of the track. But the track is just a little bit short. I thought it had a lot of potential, but anyways, for what it was, I gave it a B. This track was actually, I think, our second country track this week, if you're not counting Gabby Barrett. Down to One by Bryan at 91. Why is this barely charting? That is what I'm wondering, because I reviewed this album, I think, in the summer that it came out of, Bryan's most recent album. And I will say the track, I think I liked the track a little bit better than when I heard it originally. My notes from the time were that the track was very mid-tempo, some very lenient pop production with like this drum machine and some use of keyboard organ tones, and it was obviously made to be on the radio, so I guess it kind of achieved that being on the Hot 100 now. The track is definitely trying to appeal to the recent boyfriend country sort of wave, a la Dan and Shay. But the track is so poppy, it could easily fit in a hip-hop verse if it wanted to, or like a Justin Bieber appearance too. There's also some sappy lyrics on here, and Bryan is at least present in the vocal performance, but the production is just very glitzy. There are some nice melodic elements in the overall songwriting outside of the vocals, but Yeah, I'm just very confused on this track. It's on the level of like Maroon 5 pop wise. It's inoffensive, but it's very contrasting in terms of like the other stuff on this album. But yeah, I guess I was kind of right that this was made for country radio, because it looks like it probably will be staying on here. Usually Luke Bryan stuff does, so I give it a B minus. The next track was number 90, Vamp Anthem from Playboi Carti. This is the worst thing I've heard from Playboi Carti's Whole Lotta Red, I think, so far. This track is not good. It takes this eerie organ idea from Dracula's theme, and it kind of just incorporates it in like an annoying and piercing way with this pretty cheap sounding synth, and the beat is just super one-dimensional, and it's pretty much the song is as well. It sounds quite uninspired and very filler-like. I don't hate it, but it's kind of a waste of space on this album. I give it a D. The next track was actually probably one of the more interesting ones overall, probably one of the more interesting tracks to make it onto here in some time. The track is Monsters by All Time Low featuring Demi Lovato and Blackbear, coming in at 88. Now, granted, I don't really know the origins of this track. I assume All Time Low released it originally with just Blackbear, because I heard it for the first time with just Blackbear. And I think the only reason it charted was because they finally got a Demi Lovato feature on here. But I've known about this track for a while. I think I listened to it for the first time maybe a few months ago. Anyways, the track has like this very arena pop rock aesthetic. Deviates very far from typical All Time Low, especially in their past material. But the instrumental is really, really tight and refined. It's not the worst Blackbear feature I've heard either. But really what the special thing of this track is the implementation of Lovato. Starting from where she comes in on Blackbear's verse, you can hear her harmonizing with him, and she isn't bad on this. And then also, I really like the crisp drum track on this track as well. I didn't really notice that the first few times I listened to this track. And also, there's some nice anticipation that just grows on this version with Lovato on the bridge. And her typical belting when it's implemented is spot on as well. So I kind of just like what happened when they incorporated her onto this track. I was pretty lukewarm on it overall, but I'm kind of glad it's getting some more mainstream attention, so I give it a B+. This track was Refugee by Lil Durk. I thought this was another atypical Lil Durk track with a minor key piano bass instrumental, but the track has a super crisp trap drum track on here. And it sounds like a shade different than most trap music too, I'd say, on the percussive side. So I thought that was cool. I like the flow on Durk's voice as well, and the main rhythmic theme he's working off of is pretty cool. The ad-libs are incorporated quite nice, but it ends pretty fast. It's kind of just like a demo almost, but I give it a B. Next track was Go to the Moon by Playboi Carti, featured Kanye West at 82. Thought this was too short, honestly, and Carti's part was just super minimal. But I thought it starts off pretty interestingly, especially with Kanye being on here, and there's some crisp hi-hats in the intro that are pretty nice, and the incorporation of these eerie samples in the beats sound very Kanye-like as well. You definitely hear his stamp on this song, and I like the synthy elements thrown into this as well, and how they're chaotically implemented. And it's another track with like some huge sub bass hits, but the track just kind of ends too short, and it's just not developed. So I give it a C. Next track is by Lil Durk at 71, titled Redman. I thought this was a really good track. I dig the colorful and rich instrumental on this track. The soulful and chirpy guitar track that's kind of subtly layered on this as well is nice to hear, and I like the deep demonic vocal layer as well that's incorporated onto this, and the track has a lot working inside of it overall, and I just really like to hear the added nuance and progression onto the typical Lil Durk style, and I like to see that he's kind of maturing the sound. Another short track though, I give it a B though. Next track is Still Trappin' by Lil Durk and King Von at 53. I like the sinister character in this piano track. It sounds almost Kendrick-like, something that Kendrick would rap over, and I like the auxiliary percussive elements a lot in this track as well. But also I hear a lot of that typical King Von 6ix9ine similarity seeping into this. But overall, the two have some pretty good chemistry between them. It almost sounds like they're a duo, actually, and it's an interesting track. Don't really know too much. I feel like I should listen to it more, but I think I'm feeling like a B on this track. Next track was actually a pretty cool one by SZA, number 38, titled Good Days. The instrumental is like very dreamy. It's really nice to hear the aesthetic on here. You're immediately greeted with like this pretty light guitar intro with like some delay effect, I think, and percussion on this track is a bit dry, but I feel like it kind of serves the track in a way. Typical SZA vocals, but overall, like, the soundscape is just very lush, especially when the bass line enters, and there's some pretty backing vocals as well, but they're a bit buried. I would have liked to hear them more, but overall, this is a nice track. I feel like it could possibly grow on me, but we'll see. I give it a B. And we're already to that point on this episode where I go over the best and worst track of the week. We'll start on the worst track of the week, so I leave off on a positive note. So, worst track of the week goes to Just the Way by Parmalee and Blanco Brown. I didn't really know who these artists were, really. I knew immediately off the bat, just by listening to this for 4 seconds, that this was a Latin ripoff of like Sam Hunt or King Brown. I fucking hated this track immediately. Like, Parmalee is, I guess, an up-and-coming country group. Blanco Brown, on the other hand, I couldn't really pinpoint what he did on this track. We'll just say he gave vocals. But I guess he's kind of in this Nashville new wave producer sort of singer scene. But yeah, goddamn, they really didn't give a shit about ripping off the aesthetic of other country artists doing this thing. It's sanitary as hell, generic as hell. I hate the hand clap percussive elements, the glossy boy band vocal aesthetics, and the copy and paste instrumental on just about every part on this track. There's really not too much else to say about this other than it would have worked if they put any other artists on here. They could have put, I don't know, Sam Hunt on here, and it probably would have been a Sam Hunt hit. So I don't really know what's too distinct about this act, other than they're really trying to appeal to get on the Nashville radio with this. So good luck to them. Best track of the week is Slayer by Playboi Carti. This is probably one of the best tracks on Whole Lotta Red, or if not the best track. I like the bright synth melody that structures this track, and I like the sampled ad-libs as well. His charisma and performance on this track are probably the best I've heard on a Playboi Carti track in general, and I like the deep, buzzy synth melody that comes in as the track develops. It's quite fire, and actually he displays some rap chops on here. When I always kind of wonder that about Playboi Carti, because I know he has a unique, distinct presence about him, but I never really heard what he brings to the table in terms of rapping. He actually demonstrates that here, and it's not bad. So I really dug this track. I felt like the album in general would be a lot better if they kind of went in this direction. But anyways, best track of the week, Slayer to Playboi Carti. If you listened to the end of this episode, thanks for joining me. I'm the music viewer. My name's Josh. Stay tuned next week, and in general, for more reviews to come out. If you're listening on your respective streaming service, please consider subscribing there if you're digging the episodes. And if you're on YouTube, like and subscribe. Leave some feedback, good or bad, as well. But nonetheless, take care of yourselves. I'll see you later.